Hey folks, me again, back again with another video today and compared you to a forgotten Italian B horror film. So hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe. Go check out more of us videos. They actually have some pretty good content. So enough chit chat. Let's begin.
Nine forgotten old school Italian horror movies that are really good. Hi, my name is
Even during the
Chris Janice,
Cold
and
War,
thank you for checking out Marvelous Videos. The
Cold
films that
War,
we're going
even
to
before
talk
that,
about
Italy
come
cranked
with
out
the
some pretty
dark
good
effects of
films.
Italian flamboyance, pronounced
Let's see, there's
horror,
that
and a
film
touch of
Demons,
gore
recommended
and
by the
mystery.
Rageaholic.
These flicks bear a structured resemblance to what is called giallo, the Italian term for mystery fiction and thriller.
Giallo,
A typical
boppity-boopy.
feature of old Italian horror movies is the identity of their villains. They are usually unrevealed or masked. These movies stand on the pillars of cannibalism, gore, dark arcs, and witchcraft. Veteran directors of the genre, like Lucio Fulci, Mario
Well, it was
Bava,
Italy, so
and
yeah,
Michel
post-Second World
Suavi, have
War.
made fair use of special effects to show dried skulls, spurts of
Skulls,
blood, and visceral
Grim Reaper on the
guts. The
cross.
last quarter of the 20th century saw a rise in slasher and exploitation films in Hollywood, and Italian filmmakers were not slow in catching up.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you.
Grim Reaper on the cross, love it. Best of both worlds.
The Church.
The Church.
1989.
Late 80s.
In 12th century Germany, a village is massacred by the Teutonic Knights on suspicion that the villagers were devil worshippers or Satanists. A little peasant girl was among the first to be slaughtered by the Knights. After the bloodbath, a church was constructed on top of the mass grave of the denizens.
They start seeing, until they see it started haunted stuff happening.
Many centuries later, in the present day, the church hires a librarian named Evan, who accidentally conjures hell's evil forces onto Earth.
Goodness. Boy must have a death wish.
Temporarily trapped within the
That's why you never mess with the afterlife.
Priest Father Gus to ensure that it is contained. Michel Suavi directed and co-wrote The Church with Franco Ferrini and legendary Italian filmmaker Dario Argento. The film is a piece of art that has been accomplished with excellent skills via intricate camera work and special effects. The cinematography sets the tone for the impending terror that is about to engulf the viewer, while the effects are in line with Suavi's visual style. The depiction of evil forces
and this is why we have family-friendly audience and adult-friendly audience.
Attention to the movie's goat demon scene. The gore in The Church is intentionally graphic, but never vulgar.
Hey, that's why it's called adult-friendly for a reason.
What binds the viewer in an engaging experience is the enchanting music, increasing the watchability tenfold. The movie does come with a few flaws wherein the plot feels a bit incoherent and overly descriptive. But don't lose heart, because these issues are overshadowed by Suavi's master vision and filmmaking technique.
Hey, it was the 80s. They worked with what they got.
City of the Living Dead,
1980.
In New York, Mary Woodhouse is in a seance with Teresa when she sees the images of a priest committing suicide in a church cemetery. She falls out of the seance and drops dead. This premonition was of Father Thomas of Dunwich, and he has somehow opened the gates of hell in the process. Peter Bell is a
priest involved with the dark arts.
Mary's death. And visits her grave the day she was buried, only to find out that she was buried alive.
Buried alive?
He saves her, and they both leave for Dunwich to stop the demonic apocalypse. They are helped by
and this is why you make sure that, and this is why you should make sure if the person's dead or not before you bury that person alive. Before you bury that person. Sorry. Had a seizure at work. Luckily, I'm still here. Thank the Lord.
Directed by noted Italian director Lucio Fulci, this film combines the horror genre with zombies. It is a spectacular presentation of gore and terror.
Horror genre with zombies, you know they're part of horror, right?
That lacks an orderly continuity, giving viewers a feeling that the director deliberately used a non-linear narrative to tell the story. Fulci is known for his visually charming display of blood and guts, and the City of the Living Dead validates this. There are more than a few visually intense scenes, like a woman vomiting out her innards or the burying alive of Mary, who was played by Catriona McCall. The cinematography makes you focus on the carnage by the zombies, while the incredibly realistic sound effects like babies weeping and wind roaring immerse you. The film focuses on creating an eerie and terrorizing atmosphere for audiences throughout, but in the end leaves them in ambiguity. Interestingly, future Italian horror film director Michele Soavi portrays unfortunate victim Tommy Fisher.
It's just an ad, people. It's just an ad. Don't worry, I'll skip it.
You can count on him to go get food. Gas.
Rats, Night of Terror,
Rats.
1984. Many years after a nuclear apocalypse,
you know, if they put ghosts in the soundtrack, yeah, they would have been.
The population
Been
has
big.
divided into two groups.
Bigger than ever.
The first are the privileged who live underground, safe from nuclear radiation. And the second,
you know, the ghost song
Rats,
Rats,
on land under
the hit song.
A team of 11 from
they would have put it
this
right up
people
there.
come across
Here in this
an
film.
abandoned village with mutilated bodies, but they decide to settle there for the night because the place has food and water. Soon they discover flesh-eating rats have infested the village.
And this is why you keep cats and rat traps around.
One by one. The group has to fight to survive the night, and what follows in the end will blow your mind. Bruno Mattei and Claudio Fragasso directed Night of Terror. The film overflows with some unintentional humor, bloodshed, poor dialogue delivery, and many other guilty pleasures. We believe it's these things that ultimately make it enjoyable. The fusion of science fiction with horror tastes good if you're in the
Sci-fi
mood for
with
a
horror.
moderately frightening exploitation.
Good call.
The story is a riot, if one doesn't get too critical about it, and judges the film on the parameters that it should be.
I'm gonna need a bigger
namely
movie
fun,
rack.
fear, and frenzy. We suggest you watch Rats because the finale
Rats.
is something that will either leave you surprised or shocked.
Rats.
Demonia, 1990.
Demonia.
Liza is in a seance and she falls to the ground screaming. She has seen
So she
images of
screamed to
5
death.
nuns being crucified on suspicion of being Satan worshippers
Oh
by
my
the village
gosh.
residents of Sicily in the late 16th century. A few months later, Professor Evans leads Liza and a group of assistants from Toronto to Sicily to research the same ancient ruins. Professor Evans is a man of science and asks Liza not to indulge in supernatural thoughts.
No, for an archaeologist, you're not being very scientific. Besides, don't waste your time with the dark ages of history.
But the nosy
Well, somehow
Liza
some of-
cracks open a monastery.
Somehow some of that
She
pays
finds
off.
the decomposed remains of the 5 nuns who were murdered.
They're
This
skeletons.
act has freed the sisters into the world, and now they will wreak havoc on the surveyors and local villagers. How will this madness end? Brett Halsey as Professor Paul Evans and Meg Register as Liza Harris have done some decent acting in this Fulci horror. Demonia is a film based on a peculiar theme of God's brides turning into evil, and it's called nunsploitation by some critics and fans. Demonia could have been more thrilling and exciting than it already is, but the camera work is unfortunately a bit dodgy. There is the Fulci-style graphic violence and carnage, but it was toned down in this film. Having said that, Demonia is still a must-watch for horror fans, because it has been created with a lot of thought and has an engaging storyline. The scenic beauty of Sicily is stained blood red by the gruesome killings. If you need yet another reason to watch it, then director Fulci himself plays a police officer called Inspector Carter. Hotel Fear, 1978.
In the late 70s.
And in the Italian countryside, a young girl named Rosa and her mother.
I'm part
run a
Italian.
hotel. The hotel houses a few suspicious guests, like
Italy, the
prostitutes
land
and
of
pimps, as
pizza
well
and
as an
spaghetti.
older woman and her sleazy boyfriend, Rodolfo. Rosa's father has passed away, and both Rosa and her mother are in pain and mourning. Soon, we find out that Rosa's mother has passed away as well, leaving the hotel and Rosa at the mercy of men who are obsessed with sex. The abusive and greedy Rodolfo, in particular, tries to lure Rosa. But soon we find a cloaked figure who starts brutally killing every man who attempts to hurt Rosa. The identity of this figure is riveting and will leave you amused. This film has an unusual setting, containing elements of giallo and a psychological thriller, becoming difficult to place under.
That sounds like a boyfriend that'll defend his woman.
Murders, as happens in a giallo, but lacks components of suspense or mystery, which are also an indispensable part of a giallo. Director Francesco Barilli has done an incredible job in giving the film a grim and creepy atmosphere that keeps you gripped to the screen. There's minimal bloodshed, with the intense acting and subplots providing enough thrills. We would like to mention the incredible acting of Leonora Fani as Rosa and Luke Miranda as Rodolfo. The scene where Rodolfo sexually assaults Rosa with his elder girlfriend's help is sure to give you chills. We won't spoil the ending for you, but we can tell you that it is hugely grim and unsatisfactory. Touch of Death, 1988.
Late 80s.
Lester Parson is a cannibalistic psychopath who kills women for money and satisfaction, later eating their body parts.
Oh my goodness.
Lester is also a gambler.
Sounds like a cannibal.
Who is out of luck and is being hunted for money by Randy. His first victim is Maggie McDonald, whom he beats to death with a wooden stick and punches on failure. When he goes to dump her body, someone sees him in the act, but Lester almost kills him and leaves. The eyewitness gives a statement to the police before dying. When Lester learns about this on the news, he gets himself a makeover. The series of murders and subsequent makeovers continue, but they must come to an end. Lucio Fulci has directed this film in addition to writing the story and the screenplay. It's one of those flicks about serial killers where the story is told from the monster's point of view. Fulci has attempted to create a black comedy about a serial killer, but he doesn't quite reach that goal. Although, if we look at Touch of Death from the perspective of a slasher film that shows explicit gore and mindless visceral scenes, then the film fulfills the purpose of its making. The scenes where Lester Parson melts the head of a woman after shoving it inside an oven, or when he has to cut off his victim's legs because her corpse won't fit inside of his car, are naturally terrorizing and disturbingly funny. Touch of Death sometimes attempts to generate a bit of sympathy from the viewer towards Lester, but his purely hedonistic and cannibalistic persona defies that attempt. It can be safely said that the film owes a great deal to the acting of Brett Halsey as Lester.
A brick wall.
Shock, 1977.
Late 70s.
Dora was in a sanitarium for almost a year after her drug-addicted and abusive husband, Carlo, committed suicide. After her release, she has been given to the care of her present husband, Bruno. Dora, Bruno, and her son Marco have moved into their old house. Though the house is filled with Carlo's memories, Dora agrees to Bruno and Marco's decision to move in. As the family starts living and the days pass, Dora starts to notice strange events in the house. but Bruno thinks she's just having another breakdown and begs her to calm down.
I mind. Look, your breakdown, which heaven knows was understandable and could have happened to anyone, was a thing of the past.
Things reach a climax when Carlo's ghost possesses Marco. It seems that Carlo's ghost is seeking revenge for a deed committed against him in the past. Shock is the last theatrical release of legendary Italian horror director Mario Bava. A great chunk of the movie was directed by his son Lamberto Bava, mostly because the elder Bava was not in the best of health. But Lamberto remains uncredited. Due to this, we see elements of both the father and the son in the film, giving it a unique place in its theme and substance. Shock is a movie that fails to decide if it wants to be a psychological horror or a supernatural thriller. So it ultimately ends up being a mix of both, which is the beauty of its story. There's a paranormal presence, but at
We're
no
falling
point
on
in
the
time
girl.
do we get absolutely paranormal. Baba has brought out the sinister in Marco, the character played by David Collin Jr., although the show was ultimately stolen by the beautiful acting of Dora's actress, Daria Nicolodi. The storyline might be unoriginal, but Baba's experience of directing horror films and his knowledge of camera work make Shock worth a watch. La Secta, or The Sect, 1991. Sometime in the third quarter of the 20th century, a group of hippies is partying and relaxing in the Californian desert when a gang of Satan worshippers slaughters them. The story then moves to Frankfurt, where the city is plagued with bizarre deaths and murders. School teacher Miriam almost runs over an older man and then invites him home to give him some care and first aid. Later, she discovers that he has died in a secret cavern on the plot of her house, something that she was unaware of. The man is Mobius, and is the elder of the satanic gang that murdered the hippies in California. She is also haunted by the dreams of the slaughter. Later, she discovers that this was all an elaborate conspiracy by the Satanists to further a diabolic and devilish plan. The Sect was produced and written by Dario Argento and directed by Michelle Soavi. Kelly Curtis plays Miriam in this visually brilliant film. The camera makes the mise-en-scène misty and dreamy, and almost dwells into the fiction genre of stream of consciousness. There's a lot of symbolism used here, but it's very open-ended and lets the viewer decipher the meaning. In the end, we can safely say that every subjective concept is accounted for and nothing feels irregular. The Sect is a very underrated film in spite of the fact that Soavi proves his mettle as a horror film director. The movie contains pronounced gore, but it wasn't there for the sake of it. Soavi has ensured that all of the throat-slitting and uncomfortable scenes became a part of the storytelling and served a purpose in the narrative.
Another ad, people. Just another ad. Don't worry, I'll skip it.
Nourishing body wash. It's the moisture.
Served a purpose in the narrative. The Spider Labyrinth, 1988. Alan Whitmore is an American professor who has a fear of spiders. He's researching a secret project called
I was scared of spiders once when I was little.
Superiors informed him of
But
a
now I love
Hungarian
spiders.
researcher named Professor Roth, who has stopped communicating his side of the research with his superiors. Alan is tasked with going to Hungary and finding out what is causing Professor Roth's silence. In Hungary, Alan meets Roth, who gives him a book that is supposed to have all the critical information and dangerous secrets about the Intextus project. Roth asks Alan to meet him later that night.
So Alan's basically in communist.
A few characters advise him to go back to America and save his own life. But for Professor Alan Whitmore, this mystery is too intriguing to be left unsolved. The Spider Labyrinth is a well-hidden jewel of Italian horror cinema of the late 20th century, starring Roland Wybanga as Alan. It was directed by Gianfranco Gianni and remains one of his more engaging movies. The film's beauty is that there's no drop of bloodshed in the first 40 minutes, yet remains very engaging and immersive. This is far from a slasher film with a profoundly engrossing atmosphere. Influenced by the works of H.P. Lovecraft, we see subjects like phobia, secretive cults, and beastly gods. We won't spoil
Beastly
the movie
entities.
for you and let you enjoy the too intense climax made better with Ricardo Orono and Tonino Cervi's great screenplay.
And if you liked our content,
Anyway, folks, yes, I do highly recommend this film. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, follow me on Amino, TikTok, and Discord. And God bless y'all, and I'll see y'all next video.